When I first met Daniel, everyone told me I had hit the jackpot. He was charming, successful, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. My friends envied me, my parents adored him, and honestly, in the beginning, I thought I had found my happily ever after. The first year of our marriage felt like a dream. Flowers on the table, romantic dinners, weekend getaways. It was the kind of life you only see in movies. But then the mask started slipping. At first, it was small things. Comments about what I wore. That dress is a little too short, don't you think? Or, I don't like how other men stare at you. I brushed it off as protectiveness. But over time, those comments turned into commands. He decided what I wore, where I went, even who I talked to. I didn't notice it right away, but slowly, my world started shrinking. My friends stopped inviting me out because I could never go. My parents complained that I barely visited anymore. And every time I tried to push back, Daniel would twist it into an argument. He was a master of gaslighting. Somehow, I always ended up apologizing, even when he was the one at fault. Then came the anger. His temper was like a storm, sudden, violent, unpredictable. He never hit me, but the yelling, the slamming doors, the way he'd throw things across the room, it was enough to keep me in constant fear. I lived in a house where silence meant safety, and one wrong word could trigger an explosion. But the worst part? The secrets. Late-night phone calls he wouldn't explain. Receipts for expensive dinners I wasn't at. Messages that popped up on his phone that he quickly deleted. My gut told me something was wrong, but every time I asked, he'd laugh and say I was paranoid. Still deep down, I knew. I knew my marriage was rotting from the inside. And I knew one day, I'd find proof. It was a Thursday night when my suspicions finally started to harden into something real. Daniel told me he had an urgent business meeting at one of the downtown restaurants. Normally, I would have believed him, but something about the way he rushed out of the house felt wrong. He wasn't carrying his laptop, no documents, no tie. Just cologne. Too much of it. I tried to ignore it, but the silence in the house ate away at me. My hands shook as I picked up his spare phone from the drawer. He usually kept it locked, but in his arrogance, he had never changed the old passcode. My birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me. Inside, the truth unfolded like a knife to the chest. Dozens of messages with a woman named S. Flirty texts, dinner reservations, hotel confirmations. Pictures of wine glasses clinking together. Pictures he had sent her the same nights he told me he was working late. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. But that wasn't the only betrayal I found. There were bank notifications too. Thousands of dollars withdrawn in cash, transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. We were supposed to be saving for a house. Instead, he was draining our future to fund his double life. I sat there frozen, the phone heavy in my hands, as 1,000 memories replayed in my head. Every fight, every gaslight, every time he made me feel insane, it all clicked. He wasn't protecting me. He was covering for himself. When Daniel came home later that night, reeking of perfume that wasn't mine, I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. I asked him how his meeting went. He kissed me on the cheek and lied straight to my face. And in that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to cry.
No.
I was going to play the game his way.
Quiet.
Careful. Calculated. Because if Daniel thought he was clever, he hadn't seen anything yet. From that night on, every smile I gave Daniel was a mask. Every goodnight kiss was just another layer of camouflage. Inside, I was burning, but I couldn't afford to let him see it. Not yet. I started small. I copied every bank statement, every credit card bill, every suspicious transfer. I opened a secret folder on my laptop, hidden under a boring work project name. In that folder, I collected proof. Late-night charges at hotels. Jewelry store purchases that had never made it to me. Even Uber receipts to neighborhoods we didn't know anyone in. Then I upgraded my strategy. While Daniel thought I was busy with household chores, I quietly bought a small recording device online. I slipped it into the pocket of his blazer before one of his business meetings. When he came home hours later, I retrieved it and played it back. The sound of laughter, a woman's voice, the clink of wine glasses, and Daniel whispering words of love he hadn't spoken to me in years. My chest tightened, but at the same time, I smiled, because now I had something undeniable. But I wasn't done. One afternoon, I visited the restaurant he frequented. I accidentally struck up a conversation with a friendly waiter. A little charm, a generous tip, and soon he was telling me stories of Daniel's regular visits with a girlfriend. He even remembered what table they usually sat at. My blood boiled, but I kept my cool. The waiter agreed to testify if needed. That was my first real witness. The more evidence I collected, the more powerful I felt. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one trapped. Daniel was. He just didn't know it yet. And then came the discovery that changed everything. While digging through the glove compartment of his car, I found a folded envelope. Inside were legal documents, papers I wasn't supposed to see. Divorce papers, with my name on them. It turned out Daniel was planning to get rid of me first. He had marked dates, notes about property division, even custody arguments for kids we didn't even have yet. He wanted to paint me as unstable, paranoid, unfit. That was the moment the fear vanished completely. If he wanted a war, then I would give him one. The moment I saw those divorce papers, everything inside me shifted. For years, Daniel had controlled me with fear, manipulation, and lies. But now I had the upper hand. He thought I was broken, weak, too scared to fight back. He had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. I contacted a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. A woman known for tearing apart toxic men in divorce court. The kind who didn't just win cases, she obliterated the other side. I walked into her office with my laptop, my folder of receipts, and the recording device. By the time I was done showing her everything, she leaned back in her chair, smiled, and said the words I had been dying to hear. "Don't worry. We've got him." From that moment, it became a chess game. My lawyer told me to stay quiet, act normal, and let Daniel believe he was in control. So I did exactly that. Every morning, I kissed him goodbye. Every night, I asked about his business meetings. And every time he lied, I smiled sweetly, knowing his lies were digging his grave deeper. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, we were building a case so airtight it would crush him. I subpoenaed bank records through my lawyer, tying every shady transaction to his affair. I pulled phone logs showing late-night calls to his mistress. And the best part? That waiter from the restaurant? He agreed to testify under oath. But I didn't stop there. I started documenting his temper at home. Every slammed door, every shouted insult, I wrote it down in a journal, complete with dates and times. Once, I even managed to record him screaming at me for forgetting to wash one of his shirts. The recording captured every cruel word, every insult about how worthless I was. My lawyer said it was gold. And through it all, Daniel was none the wiser. He strutted around the house, bragging about business deals, smirking at his phone, thinking he was the clever one. Little did he know the walls were closing in. The night before he planned to serve me those divorce papers, I stayed awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. My heart was pounding, not with fear this time, but with anticipation. He thought he was going to destroy me. But tomorrow? Tomorrow he would learn what it felt like to be outplayed. The morning Daniel finally served me the divorce papers, he looked victorious. He slid the envelope across the kitchen counter with that same smug smile I had seen too many times before. "I think it's best we end this," he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You'll be taken care of course. But it's clear you can't handle being married to someone like me." I almost laughed. Instead, I lowered my eyes, pretending to tremble, pretending to be exactly what he wanted me to be. Weak, broken, defeated. If only he knew that the papers he handed me were nothing but his own death sentence. 2 weeks later, we stood in divorce court. Daniel arrived with a high-priced attorney at his side, adjusting his designer suit like he was walking into a business deal. He looked at me and smirked again, as if to say, "This will be quick." But then my lawyer stood up.
"Come."
confident,
deadly.
The judge asked for opening statements, and Daniel's lawyer began with a story Daniel had crafted. According to him, I was unstable, paranoid, and financially irresponsible. He painted me as a clingy, jealous wife who couldn't keep the marriage together. I could see the judge listening politely, nodding as if this was all routine. And then it was our turn. My lawyer stood tall and began pulling out file after file, document after document. Your Honor, the defendant accuses my client of instability. But what you will see is a pattern of infidelity, deception, and financial misconduct, all orchestrated by Mr. Daniel himself. The courtroom shifted. Daniel's smirk faltered just slightly. One by one, the evidence came out. Bank statements with unexplained withdrawals. Credit card bills for luxury dinners and hotels. Screenshots of messages to his mistress. Then came the recording, Daniel's voice, clear as day, calling me worthless, screaming that I was lucky he even stayed with me. The judge's eyes narrowed. But the knockout punch? The waiter. Calmly, under oath, he described how Daniel was a regular at the restaurant, with a woman who was definitely not his wife. By the time he finished testifying, Daniel's face had drained of all color. His lawyer tried to object, to spin the story, but it was useless. The mountain of evidence was too high. I sat there quietly, hands folded in my lap, not saying a word. For once, I didn't need to. The truth was finally speaking for me. And as the judge leaned forward, adjusting her glasses, she said the words that made Daniel's jaw tighten in panic. Mr. Daniel, it appears this case is not about an unstable wife. It's about your misconduct. That was the first time I saw genuine fear in his eyes. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of papers shuffling. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat, tugging at his tie like it was strangling him. His lawyer whispered frantically in his ear, but Daniel's eyes stayed locked on me. The smirk was gone. What replaced it was something I had never seen before, pure panic. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Daniel, based on the evidence presented, it is clear you have not only been unfaithful, but you have also misused marital funds. The words hit him like a hammer. My lawyer rose again. Your Honor, we are requesting a full financial settlement in my client's favor, including alimony, division of assets, and sole ownership of the family home. Additionally, we request compensation for emotional damages, given the psychological abuse documented in recordings and testimony. The courtroom gasped. Even I felt a jolt. My lawyer had gone further than I expected. Daniel's lawyer immediately objected. This is outrageous. My client is a respected businessman. He cannot be expected to lose everything over exaggerated claims. But the judge cut him off sharply. Exaggerated? The evidence is undeniable. Your client's lifestyle, funded by marital assets, shows a blatant disregard for his vows and responsibilities. He will be held accountable. Daniel's face turned red, veins visible on his temple. He stood up suddenly, slamming his hands on the table. This is insane. She's nothing without me. I made her. Everything she has is because of me. The judge banged her gavel. Sit down, Mr. Daniel. One more outburst, and I'll hold you in contempt of court. He sat, but his chest was heaving. For the first time, the mask of control he always wore had cracked completely. My lawyer calmly placed one final folder on the judge's bench. Your Honor, here are the offshore accounts Daniel tried to conceal. Accounts he thought no one would find. The judge's eyes widened slightly as she flipped through the documents. Daniel froze, his face draining of color. He hadn't expected me to find those. The judge looked up. Mr. Daniel, this is fraud. If this is verified, and I assure you it will be, you're not just facing divorce. You may also be facing federal charges. The courtroom erupted in whispers. I sat quietly, my hands steady, my heart calm. For years, I had been the silent wife, the one who never fought back. But today was different. Daniel finally looked at me, his eyes wide with something I had never seen before. Not anger, not arrogance, but fear. And for the first time, I let myself smile. Court had been adjourned for the day. I walked down the courthouse steps, the late afternoon sun warming my face. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace.
But it didn't last.
As I reached the parking lot, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned, and there he was, Daniel. His tie was loose, his face pale, and his eyes wild. "You think you've won, don't you?" he hissed, stepping too close. "You think you've embarrassed me in front of everyone? Do you have any idea who you're messing with?" I froze, but my lawyer quickly stepped between us. "Back off, Daniel. This isn't the courtroom, but harassment is still a crime. Walk away before you make this worse." Daniel ignored him. His eyes burned into mine. "You won't get a dime. Not from me. Not from anyone. I'll burn everything before I let you take it." He leaned closer, his voice dropping into a venomous whisper only I could hear. "If I go down, I'm taking you with me." For a second, old fear surged back. This was the man who once controlled my every move, who broke me down piece by piece. But this time, I didn't flinch. I met his gaze, steady and unshaken. "You already lost me a long time ago," I said calmly. "Now, you're just losing everything else." Security appeared, pulling Daniel away as he shouted threats, his voice echoing across the lot. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." I watched him struggle against the guards, and instead of fear, I felt something new.
Pity.
Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my lawyer. He had just received confirmation. Daniel had liquidated some of his businesses earlier that day. It looked like he was trying to move money fast, maybe to hide it, maybe to run. But he had left a paper trail. A sloppy one. And that's when I realized Daniel wasn't just desperate. He was unraveling. The war wasn't over yet. If anything, it was about to hit its most dangerous stage. The morning after Daniel's outburst, my lawyer called me into his office. On his desk were piles of documents, neatly arranged, each one stamped with official seals. He looked at me with a small smile. "Daniel thinks he's clever, but he just handed us everything we need." I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" He tapped the papers. When he tried to liquidate his businesses and move assets offshore, he violated several court orders. Worse, the accounts he tried to hide are now traceable. His desperation left a trail a mile wide. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with anticipation. For years, Daniel had played the role of the untouchable. He thought he was smarter than everyone, above every law. Now his arrogance was digging his grave. That afternoon in court, my lawyer presented the evidence. Wire transfers, shell companies, false signatures, all traced back to Daniel. The judge's face hardened. "Mr. Daniel, are you aware that concealing assets during divorce proceedings is not only unethical, but illegal? This court takes such violations very seriously." Daniel's lawyer stammered, fumbling with papers. "Your Honor, these transactions were business necessities, temporary reallocations." The judge cut him off. "Don't insult this court with word games. The evidence is clear." Daniel's jaw clenched so tightly, I thought his teeth might break. His eyes darted to me, blazing with fury. But this time it wasn't working. He wasn't scaring me. He was exposing himself. My lawyer added one more piece of fire to the pile. "Your Honor, we also request forensic accountants be assigned immediately to ensure full transparency of Mr. Daniel's assets. Given his history, we believe he may have attempted this kind of fraud before." The judge nodded. "Motion granted. Mr. Daniel, until further notice, all your financial activities are frozen." The sound of the gavel echoed like thunder. Daniel's face drained of color. For the first time, the man who thought he owned the world looked small, cornered, powerless. And in that moment, sitting there in silence, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. The next week, I woke up to a dozen missed calls and buzzing notifications. Friends, cousins, even old neighbors had texted me. "Turn on the TV." When I did, my stomach sank. There was Daniel, sitting on a glossy news studio couch, dressed in a sharp suit and fake humility plastered across his face. His voice trembled just enough to sound rehearsed. "I've been painted as a monster," he said, looking straight into the camera. "But the truth is, I'm the victim here. My wife," he paused dramatically, sighing, "she was manipulative, cold, and only married me for my money. And now she's using the court system to destroy me." The reporter leaned forward, nodding sympathetically, eating up every word. Daniel continued, his tone dripping with manufactured sincerity. "I built everything with my own 2 hands. And now, she wants to take it all away. I still love her, but she has turned this into a witch hunt." I felt my blood boil. He was flipping the story, painting me as the villain. And worse, thousands of people were watching. Within hours, hashtags with his name trended online. Supporters flooded social media, calling me greedy, a liar, a gold digger. Strangers hurled insults, as if they knew the truth. It stung, I won't lie. After everything I had endured, to be smeared publicly felt like another knife to the heart. But then my lawyer called. His voice was calm, steady, almost amused. "Let him talk," he said. "The more he runs his mouth, the bigger the mess he creates. And besides," there was a pause, and I could hear the rustle of papers. "We have receipts. Real ones." That evening, we sat in his office, reviewing everything. Photos, bank statements, text messages, recorded calls. Proof of the affairs. Proof of the hidden accounts. Proof of the emotional abuse. "Tomorrow," my lawyer said with a sharp smile, "we're going public too. And trust me, Daniel has no idea what storm is about to hit him." I sat back in the chair, exhaling slowly. For years, Daniel had controlled the narrative, twisting the truth to suit his ego. But not anymore. This time, the world would finally see him for who he really was. The morning after Daniel's TV appearance, my phone buzzed again. But this time it wasn't hate. It was curiosity. A local journalist had messaged me directly. "We've seen Daniel's interview, but sources tell us there's another side. Do you want to share your story?" For the first time, the power balance shifted. Daniel had gone too loud, too public. And in doing so, he opened the door for me. That afternoon, I sat in a small studio, nerves twisting in my stomach. The lights were bright, the camera red light blinking steadily. But when the first question came, "What's the truth behind your divorce?" I didn't hesitate. I told everything. Calmly, clearly, without theatrics. I spoke about the control, the lies, the years of silence. And then I let the evidence do the talking. My lawyer handed the anchor copies of Daniel's bank records, screenshots of his messages, and even audio recordings of his drunken rages. Each piece was undeniable. Each piece shattered the image he had tried to create. The anchor's face shifted from curiosity to shock to disgust. By the time the segment aired that evening, the internet had exploded. Clips of Daniel's hypocrisy spread like wildfire. One side-by-side video went viral, his fake sob story on one screen, my calm delivery of receipts on the other. The contrast was brutal. His supporters vanished overnight, replaced by critics calling him a fraud, a liar, a manipulator. Brands began distancing themselves from his businesses. Even his so-called friends, the ones who always praised him, suddenly stopped answering his calls. For Daniel, the empire he had built on appearances was collapsing in real time. But I knew him too well. He wasn't going to sit quietly and accept defeat. No, Daniel was the kind of man who, when cornered, would burn the whole house down. And somewhere deep inside, I could feel it. The storm wasn't over. The worst was still coming. The last day of court was thick with tension. The air felt heavy, like everyone in the room could sense something irreversible was about to happen. Daniel sat across from me, but this time there was no smirk, no arrogance, only hollow eyes and clenched fists. The judge entered, papers in hand. The courtroom fell silent. After reviewing the evidence, she began, "It is the finding of this court that Mr. Daniel engaged in marital misconduct, financial fraud, and intentional concealment of assets." Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel's face went pale. The judge continued, her voice steady, firm, unshakable. "As such, full custody of the children is awarded to the wife." The family home and all joint assets are transferred to her name. Furthermore, alimony and financial penalties will be levied against Mr. Daniel to ensure compliance. Additionally, she paused for effect, looking directly at him. The evidence of offshore accounts has been referred to federal authorities for criminal investigation. Daniel shot up from his seat.
No.
This is a setup. She did this to me. She. Enough, the judge thundered, gavel striking. Mr. Daniel, sit down or you will be escorted out. But it was too late. Court officers were already moving toward him as his outburst echoed through the room. His lawyer sat frozen, knowing the battle was lost. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I simply breathed. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lifting, the chains breaking. Daniel was dragged from the courtroom, still screaming, but his words no longer mattered. They were just noise, powerless against the truth. My lawyer leaned toward me and whispered, "It's over. You won." But I shook my head softly. "No," I said, my eyes following Daniel as he disappeared through the doors. "It's not that I won. It's that I'm finally free." As I walked out of the courthouse, sunlight spilled over me, warm and steady. For years, I had lived in his shadow, silenced by his control.
But now?
Now I had my life back. The toxic marriage ended here, and my new beginning had just begun.